Iran's war messaging has entered a new phase, with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps portraying the latest barrage as a decisive escalation in what it calls Operation True Promise 4. But the verified picture from current reporting is more complex than the rhetoric in the source material. The war between Iran and Israel is indeed intensifying. Iranian missiles have struck near Dimona and Arad in southern Israel, and attacks have widened across the region, yet several details in. The original narration remain unverified or presented there as one-sided military claims rather than independently confirmed facts. Current official and major news reporting also confirms that Donald J. Trump is the current president of the United States and Benjamin Netanyahu is the current prime minister of Israel. Recent Reuters and app reporting shows that the present war began after major U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran on February 28, 2026, and has since expanded into a broader regional confrontation involving missile exchanges, pressure on Gulf states, attacks near strategically sensitive sites, and growing diplomatic efforts to prevent a wider collapse into full regional war. Reuters also reports that Iranian missiles struck near Dimona, close to Israel's nuclear research area, while APP says strikes in the Dimona-Rad area injured dozens. Dimona matters because it sits near one of Israel's most sensitive nuclear-linked zones. Reuters notes that Israel's secretive nuclear reactor is roughly 13 kilometers southeast of Dimona, which helps explain why any strike in that area carries outsized symbolic and strategic weight. Below is a fully reworked journalist-style script based on your material, updated for current facts, cleaned up for natural spoken delivery, and written so that quoted lines remain only for the most important statements. The war rhetoric coming out of Tehran is growing sharper, louder, and more expansive as the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps signals that it sees this conflict not as a contained exchange, but as a campaign entering a more dangerous stage. In its latest statements, the IRGC presents the newest wave of attacks under Operation True Promise 4 as more than another round of missile launches. It casts the operation as a strategic shift, a moment meant to show that Iran can strike across several fronts at once, sustain pressure over time, and keep both Israel and the United States guessing about what comes next. That framing matters, because even after weeks of escalating exchanges, the central question is no longer whether the conflict has widened. It clearly has. The question now is whether either side still has a realistic off-ramp. According to current reporting from Reuters and app, the war has already spread beyond direct Iran-Israel strikes. Missile and drone attacks, retaliatory threats, regional military alerts, and diplomatic scrambling now stretch across a much broader map, from Israel and Iran to Gulf states and critical shipping routes linked to the Strait of Hormuz. In that atmosphere, the IRC is trying to do two things at once: project military momentum and reinforce political resolve at home. Its public messaging describes the latest wave as a turning point. It claims coordinated attacks using missile systems, drones, and precision-guided platforms struck sensitive targets in and around Israel, including areas of high strategic value. Some of those border battlefield claims cannot be independently confirmed in full from the available reporting, but the wider direction of the war is not in doubt. Reuters has reported that Iranian missile strikes recently hit near Dimona and Arad in southern Israel, an area of enormous sensitivity because of its proximity to Israel's nuclear research infrastructure. App likewise reported strikes in the same area that injured dozens. That gives Tehran's messaging a sharper edge. Dimona is not just another location on the map. It has long stood as shorthand for one of Israel's most secretive and strategically significant assets. Reuters notes that Israel's reactor complex lies about 8 miles or 13 kilometers southeast of Dimona. So when missiles land in that orbit, the military effect and the psychological effect are both significant. The language used by the IRC suggests that this is exactly the point. The organization is not simply announcing launches. It is trying to tell its adversaries that no target should be assumed untouchable and no battlefield should be assumed fixed. At the same time, there's a major difference between military propaganda and independently verified outcomes. The source material describes highly specific operational successes, wave counts, weapon systems, and casualty claims. Some of those assertions remain impossible to verify from reliable public reporting at this stage. That distinction is essential in any journalistically written account. The IRC has every incentive to maximize the appearance of success, just as Israel and the United States have their own incentives in describing damage, deterrence, and control. Still, even when the propaganda is stripped away, the core reality remains grim. This is already one of the most dangerous regional escalations in recent years. Reuters reported on March 24 that Iran launched another wave of missiles at Israel amid fragile diplomatic feelers and conflicting public signals from Washington. On the same day, Reuters reported that Iran had hardened its negotiating position and that the Revolutionary Guards were playing an even more decisive role in national wartime decision-making. That brings the political context into focus. The current president of the United States is Donald J. Trump, according to the White House website. The current prime minister of Israel is Benjamin Netanyahu, according to Israel's government portal. Those titles matter in a rewrite like this because they shape how the conflict is framed internationally and because outdated labels would distort the stakes. Trump's role is especially important because he is not a peripheral figure in this war. Reuters reports that he has spoken publicly about talks aimed at halting or containing the conflict, even as military pressure has continued. AP likewise reports active diplomacy around possible talks, with Pakistan offering to facilitate negotiations. Yet Iran has denied formal direct negotiations while still engaging intermediaries. In other words, public talk of diplomacy exists side by side with live missile exchanges. That contradiction is one reason the IRGC's rhetoric leans so heavily on psychological framing. It wants to depict U.S. statements about talks, pauses, or de-escalation not as signs of diplomacy, but as evidence that sustained Iranian pressure is forcing hesitation on the other side. One of the clearest lines in that messaging is the insistence that public resolve inside Iran remains firm despite military pressure, economic strain, and a wider war. That claim is politically useful for Tehran, but it also has to be read against a more troubled background. Reuters and AP reporting point to protests, repression, internal strain, and uncertainty inside Iran, even as the state projects wartime unity. AP, for example, reports that the besieged volunteer force remains deeply involved in domestic control and suppression, despite Israeli attacks targeting its structure. That is why any reference to the besieged carries special meaning. In Arabic messaging, invoking those volunteer forces is meant as a warning that Iran has additional manpower and ideological mobilization capacity available if the war deepens further. In outside reporting, the besieged is understood not simply as an auxiliary military force, but as a pillar of internal enforcement and regime control. So when the IRGC implies that not all combat capacity has yet been committed, the statement works on multiple levels. It is a message to Israel, to Washington, to Gulf capitals, and to domestic audiences inside Iran. It says the state believes it still holds escalatory options in reserve. Whether that is true in practical battlefield terms is harder to judge. Israel's own messaging has been assertive. Reuters reported earlier this month that Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar said Israel had effectively won the war against Iran, while also admitting that important goals remained unmet and operations would continue. That is a revealing contradiction in itself. If the goals are not yet met, then the war is not politically finished, no matter how victory is declared. That is one of the reasons this conflict remains so dangerous. Each side is trying to project control. Each side is also signaling that it is not done. The operational geography is widening as well. The source text refers to U.S. bases in the region coming under attack, including locations in Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. Parts of that broader pattern align with recent AP coverage showing regional spillover, Gulf alerts, missile and drone threats, and expanding concern among U.S. partners in the region. But the exact descriptions of every named base strike in the source material should be treated carefully unless independently confirmed in each case. What is verified is that the conflict has moved well beyond a narrow bilateral exchange and is now threatening a larger regional security architecture. That widening battlefield has global consequences. The Strait of Hormuz remains one of the world's most strategically important energy choke points, and AP reports that Iran has threatened to close it completely if pressure intensifies further. Reuters has also reported major concern over shipping and energy disruption. A prolonged war, even without a formal closure, could send shockwaves through oil, gas, shipping, insurance, and global commodity markets. There is also the nuclear shadow hanging over every exchange. Strikes near Dimona in Israel and strikes involving Iran's own nuclear-linked infrastructure increase the risk that a war already spiraling outward could trigger a still more severe crisis if either side concludes that strategic deterrence itself is under direct threat. That does not mean nuclear use is imminent. It does mean that symbolism, targeting, and signaling around nuclear-related sites now matter more than ever. Another important factor is the role of allied and proxy forces. Reuters reports that the IRGC has helped Hezbollah rebuild and adapt after earlier losses, and that the group has remained active in the broader conflict. This reinforces the idea that Iran's strategy is not limited to direct strikes from its own territory. Instead, Tehran retains multiple levers across the region, some overt and some indirect, allowing it to stretch the battlefield and complicate enemy planning. That is part of why the phrase impact-driven operations, or any similar formula in IRGC language, should be read less as a technical military term and more as doctrine by messaging. It is a way of saying that Iran intends to choose targets for both battlefield effect and political impact, infrastructure, symbolism, pressure points, morale and deterrence, and yet, for all the maximalist language, there are signs that diplomacy has not entirely collapsed. AP reports that Pakistan has offered to host talks. Reuters reports that intermediaries, including Pakistan, Turkey, and Egypt, have been involved in exploratory contact, even as Tehran rejects the idea that formal direct negotiations are underway. This creates the classic pattern of a war that is still being fought fiercely, even while all sides test the edges of a possible diplomatic channel. That does not make de-escalation likely. It simply means the option has not disappeared. For now, however, the dominant reality is escalation. What Tehran wants the world to see is stamina, range, and resolve. What Israel wants the world to see is that Iran has been weakened and can be pressured further. What Washington appears to want is leverage without uncontrolled regional collapse. None of those goals sits easily beside the others. And that is what makes the latest IRGC rhetoric so important. It is not just war language. It is a public claim that Iran believes time and escalation can still work in its favor. Here are the key preserved lines integrated in a journalist-style way. The IRGC signaled that the campaign is entering a more dangerous stage, effectively declaring that this is no longer retaliation. This is escalation on a scale not seen before. Describing the strategic tempo of the operation, the group framed the latest assault as a milestone, saying the question now is not whether this conflict is escalating. It already has. The real question is how far it will go. In its political messaging aimed at Washington, the organization also dismissed mixed U.S. signaling, insisting that the contradictory behavior of America's deceitful president will not make us neglect the war front and the battle with the adversary. And in language meant to project endurance and resolve, it added, the heroic steadfastness and resilient resistance of the Iranian nation has led to bewilderment and uncertainty in the strategies and scenarios of the aggressive enemy. For now, those words sit against a battlefield that is already burning across multiple fronts. Iran has shown it can still strike. Israel has shown it will keep fighting. The United States remains deeply entangled. The Gulf is on edge. Diplomacy is alive, but only barely. And as missiles continue to fly near some of the most sensitive military and nuclear-linked locations in the region, the grim truth is this: the war is no longer defined by a single front, a single strike cycle, or a single red line. It is being reshaped in real time by deterrence, retaliation, political theater, and the fear that the next wave could go further than the last.